Given the recent kidnapping of an American in the Philippines, is it safe for expats to travel or live in the Philippines? And who's after them in the first place anyway? What areas in the Philippines are considered dangerous? And what anti-government factions exist that we need to be aware of that could cause trouble for us or risk our safety as an expat? Well, hi, I'm Eric, and welcome to my Island Expats channel. I will answer each of these questions in detail for you today. I've traveled to the Philippines for the last 10 years, and there are certain areas that we need to stay away from for our own safety, as the risk is probably more real than you might be aware. You're probably wondering, well, why would certain groups target expats in the first place? Well, there are three primary reasons: economics, meaning ransom money, fear tactics, and ideology. But I'll explore additional agendas a little further into this video so we all can kind of better understand what else is at stake here. In this video today, I will cover what areas in the Philippines are considered dangerous for expats and the reasons why we need to be cautious in certain areas. This includes the anti-government groups that present a risk that can hold us for ransom, political purposes, or even worse. I think you'll be surprised at some of the terrorist organizations that are actively battling the Philippine government and have been for quite some time. Some of these organizations go back to the 1960s and 1970s, all the way up to the present day. I'll give you an overview of each of the main organizations, their objective, activities, and areas of operation, so you know where in the Philippines they're active. I will also cover what areas are considered mostly safe, but also some considerations to make sure you're informed of the risk traveling or living in the Philippines. Let me start off first by saying I think the Philippines is an amazing place, and out of the 10 years of visiting there, I've never really felt threatened or in danger. So overall, as long as you understand the elements of the country, where to go and where not to go, just like any other country in the world, you should be safe to travel to the Philippines. But if you have the idea that you're going to be brave or bold or something and fend off some of these groups, I don't think you'll be feeling that way when there's an M16 pointed at you and they have a completely different agenda than yours. So let's start off with why Western expats, particularly from the US and Europe, are targeted. Not all expats, but US and Europe and Canada and UK. And why are they targeted in the first place by these anti-government groups? Well, the first reason is ransom money. Some of these anti-government groups, like Abu Sayyaf, fund their operation by taking hostages and asking for ransom money. The second reason is political leverage, by attracting global media attention, which can force governments to negotiate for ransom money or release imprisoned members from the PH government. Now, I hate to bring this up because this is going to be a bit controversial, but there have been some reports in southern Mindanao for expats to go ahead and move from the province to the city so that they're not held for ransom by someone running for office within the Philippines. Now, I'm sure that's very much the exception and not the rule. But there have been several reports of police going to the doors of the homes of expats in places like southwestern Mindanao. In this particular instance, I'm thinking of is in the Zamboanga area, which I don't believe you should be in the first place. And the police are saying, hey, the elections are coming up, you should move to the city. Why would that be? Well, there are a few unscrupulous politicians, I would say mostly probably in the Muslim areas, that are looking to fund their campaigns through ransom money. And an expat is a great way to do that. The next reason why we see these anti-government groups going after expats in the first place is to bring publicity to their cause. And they like to use fear tactics, right? They show up with M16s. They're dressed as policemen. They're trying to further their agenda and the international attention and notoriety that it brings to their group. All right. The next reason is their perception of wealth. A lot of these groups, especially the Muslim groups, are from areas that don't have a lot of industry. They may be primarily jungle or mountainous areas. These are very impoverished people for the most part. They're also funded very well through some Muslim groups, like ISIS, unfortunately, and other countries that have a Muslim bent for radical idealism, basically. So some of these people come from a very poor area. Many of them do. So they see Western expats as symbols of wealth and privilege. And they think either your family's got money, the government that you're from's got money, or maybe you had a job at a corporation and they've got money. Any of those who are willing to pay for your return. So that's another reason for this. And it's a very real thing that happens. The next thing to be thought about, considered, I mentioned it earlier, but expats really are soft targets. And the idea that I'm going to fend them off, that's not going to work. Do I say they're soft targets? Well, if there's a government official in the Philippines that's a high-ranking official, which would be a target they'd love to have for this Islamic cause in southern Mindanao, in the Sulu Sea area, well, that government official has got a lot of security, so not an easy target. High-level military personnel within the Philippines also would be, a high-profile target. Same thing. They're quite aware of these people, and they have security. But you, as an expat, most of you don't. In fact, some of you are very bold to think, it'll never happen to me. And you're also bold to think, well, it's only in southern Mindanao. Well, a lot of it is there, but there are some other areas that might be surprising to you. You're going to find out today in this video. So simply, you're an easier target to reach. I was just watching this clip, and I'll probably throw it in here, about an American in Mindanao. And he's in the greater Zamboanga area, not far from where that American got taken kidnapped, which we haven't heard from at this point, and that's not good. And the question this American in Mindanao is asking is, should I leave or should I wait it out? And I don't think it's a question. He's one of the few foreigners in that area.
Another expat here in Zamboanga del Norte, which is where he was kidnapped from. It's a large province. The police came to this expat, which is way north of me, near Depalot, and told him and his family to move out of the house and move into the city until election is over. Apparently here, politicians who don't have enough money to fund their campaign will kidnap someone in order to get money to fund their campaign. That's the part that worries me, because they told this guy to stay in the city until the election is over. I've seen where other expats were approached by police. They took their picture, told them to be very careful, all that. I have not been approached by the police yet. I'm the only one that I know of here, American, that I've seen. That's why I get to thinking maybe I should go back to the United States till this blows over, then come back, or me and Ann go to the city.
Zamboanga is not safe. Zamboanga del Norte, that whole peninsula, is not safe. If there's any question, leave. Go into a major city. Go to Davao. Go to CDO. Get away from the province, and you'll be safe. Otherwise, you're a target. In the case of this American that got kidnapped, he knew 3 weeks ahead of time that they were coming, and he didn't leave. Now, I know he's young, but he had this idea in his head somehow he'd fight them off. And what happened? He got shot in the leg because they had M16s. You're not going to defend yourself against a group that's related to ISIS, that's known for beheadings, ransom, and killings. So don't be foolish and get yourself out of there. Get to a major city where you'll be safe. The next reason that expats are targeted, it's symbolic. Expats are very much a symbolic target for groups that are anti-Western, that have radical Islamic ideologies. There's a major group in the Philippines in southern Mindanao called Abu Sayyaf, and it is affiliated with ISIS. And yes, ISIS is active throughout the Philippines and Southeast Asia, and is still a very dangerous, armed, funded group. So expats represent symbols of foreign influence or intervention, what you would call, from maybe a textbook term, Western imperialism. They don't want you there. They want to have an Islamic state. They want a caliphate, right? So what do? They attack and they kidnap Westerners. Attacking or kidnapping Westerners aligns with their broader ideological goals of resisting foreign involvement in the Philippines or Southeast Asia. They don't want you there. And that's part of the problem. We don't know the reasons why this American was kidnapped. It does not appear to be for money. There was some discussion about him loaning people a little bit of money at a high interest rate. Maybe he ticked somebody off. There also is a more likely theory on him that because he did marry a Muslim woman and he was a Western man and probably the only one in that particular city, some of the Muslim groups just plain did not like it. And he knew, he was warned. He has videos of himself saying 3 weeks ahead of time, I hear they're coming for me. Well, get the hell out of there. What are you thinking? Now, why would that be? Let's talk ideology for a minute here. According to the Quran, which is what they use for Islam, for the Muslims, that if they can't convert someone to their ideology, then they're considered an infidel and they're no longer needed. And so this is a very risky business. Let's just put it this way. The Muslim culture doesn't see a need for Christians and Catholics or any other religious group. And so it's an automatic conflict. It's not this game of can we all get along? That's not how they see it. It's either Muslim and that ideology or it's nothing. But it's thought that maybe just because he was married to this Muslim woman and he was a Westerner, and perhaps some have even said maybe Catholic, I don't know if that's true, but they didn't like it. And that was enough. But the crazy thing to me is he knew they were coming. And he didn't try to hide out a relative or in the jungle or get out of there. He stayed. And so, he's young. We're all stupid when we're young. We think we're brave. We're going to fight him off. But I'm just telling you, these groups are dangerous. What is their agenda? Well, they really want to destabilize a lot of the Philippines if they can, right? They want to impact the economy in the Philippines. They want to negatively impact tourism. Well, why would that be? Well, tourism is a major contributor to the Philippines economy. So attacking expats and tourists generates fear, and that negatively impacts investment into the Philippines. And by doing that and bringing down the tourism level, putting in this fear factor, it's not safe, it hurts the economy. In the mind of these anti-government, mostly Islamic groups, they think that that's a win, and that's what they do. Okay. Myself, I've been to Mindanao. I've personally been stopped in Mindanao by the Philippine Army. It was at a government checkpoint, and it was my fault. I didn't see a sign that said, turn on your headlights. And so I wasn't that far from a Muslim area that we call Marwi, which has been known for civil unrest. In fact, there's a full-on out battle in 2017 for 5 months against the Philippine government. It took 5 months to pull back that region. And today it's part of what they call the autonomous region in the Philippines, which is all Muslim. So what happened to me was there was a sign that said, hey, turn your headlights on. Well, it was daylight. I didn't see it. I just rented a car, and I just was coming from the airport. In fact, when the Army officer pointed at me to pull over, he pointed his M16 at me. And then he came up to the window. I rolled it down. He informed me that martial law is in place in Mindanao and that the Army is in charge, and by golly, I better follow their signs. He just wanted me to acknowledge their authority, that as the Army there, they were in charge. This particular checkpoint was between the airport I had flown in Cagayan de Oro and downtown, which is probably, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, 30 minutes or so. But it was along the way. So let's talk a little further about Mindanao, because that's kind of the hotbed. And what areas are considered part of what they call the autonomous region and how that happened. That is predominantly Muslim. And thank goodness they have this outline, because you can go to Google Maps and see it. But that way you know where to stay out of, because it is predominantly, by far, Muslim and by far radical in some of the groups that live there. It's considered very unsafe for any type of Western men. And just note that this is totally off limits. This region has clashes directly with the Philippine Army and has for years. It has a history of taking Western men for ransom, along with other violent acts, like terrorism, where they have bombings in public places, often in churches. Everyone goes to church on Sunday, they light off a bomb. It's a tough thing to fight when it's this Islamic radical ideology. So let's take a closer look at this autonomous region. And what you'll notice is there's the Sulu Sea, and anywhere near the Sulu Sea is a problem. There's an island group down there called Tawi-Tawi, and that has got a very active, radical group of people that live there. If you're anywhere near the Sulu Archipelago, you're in a hot spot for crime, terrorism, and kidnapping. There is a high risk of violence, and it's just a do not travel zone for foreigners. Now, I also want to point out that in western and central Mindanao, in areas like Lanao del Sur, the Zamboanga Peninsula, that's where our friend was at, the American that got kidnapped, and the other guy debating whether he should stay or not, and then another there called Maguindanao. All of those areas in central Mindanao and western Mindanao are considered unsafe due to terrorism, insurgent activities, and the risk of being kidnapped. There's a very dominant group there that is dangerous that's called Abu Sayyaf. Also, the NPA, which is the Communist Party, basically, that's armed in the Philippines, known as the New People's Army, are also active there. And guess what? The NPA does have a bit of a group in central Negros up in the mountains, which is between Dumaguete and Bacolod. Now, that's a huge island, but that is an area that you don't want to go to. I was just there recently, and I had this idea of running a scooter and then driving the entire island. And I'm sure some of the other expats, maybe Gio or Rike, those guys that have been around for years, probably have done it. But there is an area there that you have to pass by the NPA, and I was warned about that. So does the U.S. government say anything about this? Yes, they do. The State Department has a travel warning about all of this area in Mindanao, and it clearly states that it's unsafe to be there. Here's where the State Department has their website, and here's what the actual travel warning states. I do want to point out, though, that while I was traveling through Cagayan de Oro, and there are a few people that live there, Rob from Fly Me to the Philippines and Chrissy, who just got married. Congratulations, you guys. Totally excited for you. They live there. There's not as many expats in that area. And so far, it hasn't been a problem for them or for him. Actually, she's from Mindanao originally, so probably not an issue there. I do want to point out that while I traveled through Cagayan de Oro, there is a Muslim presence in that city. And I did see mosques right up against neighborhoods. Even though this area is mixed, there's quite a few Catholics and Christians, and it's considered safe for Westerners. So, these are things you have to think about, because really, for the most part, it's different for Rob because he's got this YouTube channel. It's trying to make a living at it. But you really want to try to blend in so that you don't stand out. Anyway, that said, there's just not that many expats in general in that area. So it increases your risk a little bit because people know who you are. And you'd be surprised how many people know, oh, there's expat lives in this area. Another area in Mindanao that's considered very safe is Davao City, and typically doesn't have an issue. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm breaking it into two parts, and this is going to finish part one. Make sure to stay tuned for part two, where we'll complete our thoughts on this topic. Thank you.